Hello, my friends. Let's start with the fact that Russia continues to threaten everyone with nuclear weapons. First, they threatened with Oreshnik, and now with Poseidon.
When our Supreme Commander-in-Chief talked about this weapon a few years ago and showed it, everyone laughed. They said it was impossible, unachievable, but that's because they couldn't do it. We can. When our President and Commander-in-Chief gives a task, that task gets done. And today, the task has been completed. It's a truly powerful type of weapon capable of disabling or knocking entire countries out of the war. There's no antidote or countermeasure against it as of today. No one else in the world has anything like it, so let them think and count the cost.
As we can see, the intimidation continues. But on the front line, the fighting goes on, despite all these threats. Today we'll start with the Dobropillia direction. Here, Ukrainian armed forces have confirmed gains, advancing by 1 kilometer in the area of the villages of Sukhetske and Suvorove. This way, the Ukrainian troops are trying to cut this part of the front and block the Russians. However, the task is very difficult and the fighting continues. The Russians still have plenty of reserves, and as before, they keep assaulting Nove Shahove, Shahove, and Sofiyivka. Still, over the past day, the Russians haven't achieved any success. The battle goes on. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians continue to assault Rodinske, Krasny Lyman, Mirnograd, Lysivka, Pokrovsk, and Molodetske, and they're trying to break through Dvorichna and Kotliny. Yesterday, there were reports of new Russian advances in this area, but overnight the situation hasn't changed. Fighting continues all along the front line. Overall, the battle goes on, but the situation is on the edge. Today, the Russians are dropping aerial bombs on the Pokrovsk mine to push further along the western flank, so the activity isn't decreasing anywhere. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are assaulting Dachne, Filia, and trying to break through beyond Zeleny High. However, the front line here remains unchanged. And now, in the Pokrovsk direction in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, the situation continues to deteriorate. The Russians have managed to advance again and capture several settlements at once. Today, assaults are ongoing on Sosnivka, Verbove, Vyshneve, Rybne, and Uspenivka. Ukrainian defenders have effectively confirmed that Vyshneve has already been captured by the Russians. Earlier today, the Russians proudly announced the capture of Vyshneve. I didn't believe their loud propaganda right away. I waited for a reliable confirmation, and it came from the ground. Our brothers reported that the defense had broken, positions were lost, and Vyshneve fell under Russian control. Now you can see plenty of Russian flags in the city. I'm only showing key footage. Everything is clear without extra words. The settlement of Kyrpychne also effectively fell. It was open ground, nothing to show. The Russians just moved in and took the area. In Yegorivka, our fighters tried to counterattack on the western outskirts, but those attacks were more like symbolic moves. Infantry was thrown into battle without proper preparation, and there is no time to train new capable units. Even the Colombian missionaries didn't manage to fulfill the tasks assigned to them. In recent days, we're seeing an unpleasant trend: serious defensive lines suddenly collapsing, a lack of manpower, and no proper systematic defense built in recent years. But this isn't a reason to cry, it's a reason to act. If we give up, we'll lose ground and momentum. There is only one option: to keep fighting, bring in reinforcements, and close the gaps. So we can see that the Russians are now capturing villages much faster, not fighting for months as before. Every day, new settlements are reported. And it's important to remember this advance is happening inside Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. We're still waiting for official confirmation, but geolocation maps already mark the area in red. Practically 4 villages have come under Russian control, and the gray zone is expanding. So the assaults continue in the Huliaipole direction. And the Russians have also managed to capture the village of Okhotnyche and are now trying to move further through the fields. They've also improved their positions beyond Poltavka, gradually advancing and taking over Ukrainian positions in 3 lines and open fields. So the situation here is clearly getting worse. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, Russian activity remains quite high. The Russians are assaulting Luhivske, pushing through the fields toward Novoandriivka and attacking Sherbaki and Stepove. However, over the past day, they have failed to advance further and the front line remains unchanged. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue the attacks near the Antonivsky Bridge, but without success. Meanwhile, the shelling of the right bank continues at maximum intensity. The Russians keep claiming daily that their strikes are effective, explaining this by saying they are preparing the area for a potential landing of Russian forces on the right bank and nearby islands. So the situation in this sector remains tense and unstable. Now let's move on to the Kostiantynivka direction. Here, the Russians have managed to secure positions on the outskirts of the city and advance slightly. Today they are also pushing near Virolubivka, assaulting Klebanbyk, and advancing toward Yablonivka, Stepanivka, and Rusin Yar. Ukrainian forces have managed to push them back a bit, but counterattacks inside the city are likely soon since the Russians have stretched the front line significantly in this area. For now, we are waiting to see how the situation develops. In the Kramatorsk direction, the Russians are advancing toward Virolubivka with offensive actions observed in the fields between Maiske and the village of Markove. However, there have been no territorial changes over the past day as Ukrainian forces continue to repel all attacks. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are attacking Yampil and Dronivka, trying to break through the fields towards Siversk, but they've had no new gains over the past day and the front line remains unchanged. In the Lyman direction, the Russians have advanced significantly toward the village of Krovyi Yar and Oleksandrivka. They are also assaulting Drobysheva and Novoselivka. As we can see, the front here is starting to sag again, and the Russians are moving in the direction of Svetohirsk. It's worth noting that the Russian forces are now in a kind of large semi-encirclement. If Ukrainian forces could launch counterattacks near Katerinivka and Kolodezi, it might be possible to trap a large Russian grouping. Unfortunately, that's not possible right now because the initiative is on the Russian side with their superiority in manpower, equipment, aviation, and drones. They're managing to push through defenses and avoid being surrounded. In the Borova direction, the Russians are trying to advance towards Sukhetske and in the area of Zeleny. But the front line remains unchanged. All Russian attacks here are being successfully repelled. In the Kupiansk direction, Russian forces are attempting to break through near Pyshyane, but without success. Today, the Ukrainian side commented on the situation around Kupiansk.
We can trust the statements of the General Staff of Ukraine. Indeed, there are many of our units operating around Kupiansk. As of today, I believe the situation has been stabilized. And I hope that our defense and security forces will do everything possible to ensure that Kupiansk is not captured.
As we can see, this information is confirmed by the current battlefield reports. There have been no new Russian advances near Kupiansk, and overall Russian activity here has been minimal over the past few days, especially compared to the Pokrovsk direction. So for now, we are waiting to see how the situation develops. In the Dvorichna direction, the situation remains stable and the Russians are not launching any new assaults. In the Velykyi Breluk area, Russian forces are trying to advance across the fields toward Kolodezhne, but without success, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians are not conducting new assaults, and the situation remains stable. In Vovchansk, fighting continues, but officially the Russians haven't achieved any gains. However, looking at the geolocation maps, the red and gray zone are expanding, and Russia claims new successes. Russian army took full control over Sinelnikovo and reached the outskirts of Lyman and Prolipka. In addition, Russian forces continued leveling the front line along T-2104 road and captured Rubezhansky district as well as Vovchansk furniture factory. And no official confirmations have been released yet, and Russians haven't published videos, so we are waiting for updated information in this area. In the Sumy direction, the Russians launched 2 attacks near Oleksandrivka and Yablonivka, but they didn't succeed and the front line remains unchanged. Also, today Europe and Ukraine proposed a new plan to end the war. Listen to it till the end and then we'll discuss. The new 12-point peace plan for Ukraine from European countries has 2 main stages: ceasefire and negotiations. Details of the plan. The ceasefire begins 24 hours after both sides accept the plan. The front line is frozen at the start of the ceasefire. Negotiations start regarding the final front line, which will remain until the sides agree on permanent governments of occupied territories. Around the front line, security zones will be established where no military activity is allowed. Monitoring will be carried out by a multinational civilian mission on both sides of the line. There is a security guarantee promise for Ukraine, though no details are provided. High-level dialogue between Ukraine and Moscow is ensured to promote mutual understanding and respect for language, culture, and religion. Negotiations on permanent governance of occupied territories will begin. Ukraine's reconstruction will be funded through a special fund, which could use frozen Russian assets. Sanctions on Russia will gradually be lifted as the plan is implemented. Ukraine and Moscow will start a process to agree on compensation for war damages. A rapid response mechanism is proposed. All sanctions and restrictions automatically return if Russia attacks Ukraine again. Friends, what do you think about this? It seems Russia will not agree to most of these points. So the question remains, why these plans been created. After all, this is not the first peace plan, and none have worked so far. Meanwhile, Putin continues claiming that fighting and seizing for foreign territories is in Russian blood.
Look, didn't know, right, that Grandpa was such a warrior. And do you fight the same way as Grandpa? What does that say? It's in our genes, you see?
And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.